The fork in my hand froze halfway to my mouth. Around the dinner table, 12 faces glowed warm under candlelight, wine glasses catching amber reflections, laughter spilling between bites of roasted lamb and garlic potatoes. My housewarming party. My home. My victory after years of careful planning, saving, building something real with my own two hands. Then my sister stood up. Verena didn't ask permission. She never did. She just rose from her chair like a queen addressing peasants, tapping her wine glass with a silver spoon until every conversation died mid-sentence. "Everyone," she announced, her voice slicing through the warmth like winter wind through an open door. "Before dessert, I have something important to say." My husband Lennox glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. Across the table, my best friend Amira set down her fork with a soft clink that somehow sounded like a warning bell. The room held its breath. Verena's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she said, pulling a crisp manila folder from her designer handbag. "And from this moment forward, I am the legal owner of this house." The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples of confusion spread across every face. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered, "What?" I should have felt shock. Rage. Something. Instead, I felt oddly calm, like I'd been expecting this knife in my back for years and my body had already prepared the armor. "Excuse me?" I said softly. Verena's eyes gleamed with something ugly, something she'd probably been nursing since we were children, fighting over toys and attention. She opened the folder, spreading papers across my carefully set table like she owned it. Like she owned everything. "According to Dad's residual assets clause," she continued, her voice rising with false authority, "I have legal grounds to claim any property purchased using family estate funds." Which this house was. She paused for effect, scanning the room of stunned dinner guests. "So technically, Celeste, this is mine now. All of it." Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. My neighbor dropped her napkin. The couple from Lennox's office exchanged horrified glances. Verena's smile widened. "She's no longer welcome here," my sister announced to the room, as if she were hosting this party instead of hijacking it. "I think it's time everyone understood who really deserves what in this family." The silence that followed felt thick enough to choke on. Somewhere in the kitchen, the oven timer beeped, cheerful and oblivious. Amira's hand found mine under the table, squeezing hard enough to hurt. But I didn't squeeze back. I didn't move at all. I just looked at my sister, really looked at her, and started counting under my breath. 3, 2, 1. Then I smiled. Because what Verena didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know in her blind rage and endless jealousy, was that this house, the one she was so desperate to steal, was never bought with inheritance money at all. I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm as morning fog. "Verena, you might want to check your email." Her expression flickered. Just for a second. Confusion cracking through her confidence like ice over deep water. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "Your phone," I said gently, nodding toward the designer bag still hanging on her chair. "Check it." The room watched as she fumbled for her phone, fingers suddenly clumsy. The screen lit up her face in cold blue light. I watched the color drain from her cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "What did you do?" she whispered. I took a slow sip of wine, feeling Lennox's quiet pride radiating beside me. "I didn't do anything, Verena. You did." Nobody tells you that sibling rivalry starts before you can even talk. Before you understand words like jealousy or fairness or favorite. It starts with a look, a tone, the way your mother's face softens when one daughter enters the room and tightens when the other follows. I was 7 when I realized Verena got the smiles and I got the chores. She'd burst through the front door after school, ponytail swinging, report card clutched like a trophy even though it was mostly C's with one shining B+. Dad would scoop her up, spinning her around while she squealed. "That's my girl. Let's get ice cream." I'd wait until they left, then quietly tape my straight A report to the fridge where nobody would see it until Tuesday. Mom noticed once. She patted my shoulder. You're so responsible, Celeste. We never have to worry about you. I didn't know then that being easy to love meant being easy to forget. Verena collected people the way some kids collected stamps. Friends, teachers, boys who carried her books and wrote her name on bathroom stalls with hearts. She had this way of lighting up a room just by wanting it to notice her. I learned to build things instead. Science projects that worked. Birthday cakes that didn't collapse. Trust that came from showing up, not showing off. But trust is invisible. Charm is not. By high school, the pattern was set. Verena got the convertible for her 16th birthday. I got a used sedan for college because I'd be more practical with it. She failed biology. I tutored her through makeup exams while she texted boys under the desk. She forgot my graduation. I threw her a surprise party when she barely scraped through. Love shouldn't be a competition. But when your parents keep score without meaning to, you learn to play the game or stop playing altogether. I stopped playing. The funeral was the first time I'd seen Verena cry in years. Real tears. Not the pretty ones she could summon for effect. Dad's casket gleamed under fluorescent chapel lights, and she collapsed against it like her bones had dissolved. I held her up. Literally held her, feeling her weight against my shoulder, her mascara bleeding onto my black dress. "He's gone," she sobbed. "What are we going to do?" I wanted to say we'd be okay. That we had each other. That grief shared is grief halved. But the lawyer was already walking toward us with a briefcase that rattled with the sound of inheritance, and I saw something flicker behind Verena's tears. Calculation. After the service, Dad's attorney pulled me aside. Private conversation. He handed me a sealed envelope, cream-colored and heavy. "Your father wanted you to have this. Just you. Read it when you're ready." I tucked it into my purse, but not before Verena's eyes tracked the movement like a hawk watching a rabbit disappear into tall grass. She didn't ask about it. Not then. She waited. 3 days later, we sat in the lawyer's office for the will reading. Mahogany desk. Leather chairs. The smell of old books and older money. Verena wore black Chanel and diamond earrings. I wore the same dress from the funeral because I hadn't thought to change. The attorney cleared his throat. "Your father's estate is valued at approximately $4.2 million. This includes the vineyard, 3 rental properties, investment portfolios, and liquid assets. He's divided everything equally between his 2 daughters." I exhaled relief. Equal meant fair. Fair meant peace. Verena's face turned to stone. "Equally?" Her voice came out flat and cold. "He split it down the middle? Just like that?" "Yes, Miss Durham. 50-50 after estate taxes, and—" She stood up so fast her chair scraped backward. "This is bullshit." "Verena," I started, but she rounded on me with eyes that could melt steel. "You," she hissed, jabbing one manicured finger at my chest. "You were always the favorite. Always. The good daughter. The responsible one. He probably hid assets. Set up secret accounts for you. I know he did. That's not. I want a full audit. Every account. Every property deed. Every goddamn receipt." She grabbed her purse and turned to the lawyer. "You'll be hearing from my attorney." The door slammed behind her hard enough to rattle the diplomas on the wall. The lawyer sighed. "I'm sorry. Inheritance brings out the worst in people." I stared at the closed door, my hands trembling in my lap. Outside, I heard Verena's car engine roar to life and screech out of the parking lot, leaving rubber and rage in equal measure. That night, I finally opened Dad's letter. His handwriting was shaky but clear. "Celeste, you've always built things while others broke them. I see you. I always have. Don't let greed poison what I'm leaving behind. Protect what matters. The people, not the property. Love, Dad." I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. 3 weeks later, Verena showed up at my apartment unannounced. She pushed past me without waiting for an invitation, pacing my small living room like a caged animal. "The lawyers say everything's clean," she said. "No hidden accounts. No special treatment. But I know you, Celeste. You're planning something. Some way to take more than your share." "I'm not planning anything." She stopped pacing and looked at me with something between pity and contempt. You know what your problem is? You're so busy being good that you don't even know how to want things, how to fight for them. She moved closer, her voice dropping to something almost tender, almost dangerous. But I do, and I'm going to make sure I get what I deserve, even if that means taking it from you. She left without saying goodbye. Lennox found me an hour later, still standing in the same spot, staring at nothing. What happened? He asked gently. She declared war, I said. She just doesn't know I'm not going to fight back. He pulled me close. Sometimes the smartest move is not moving at all. I nodded against his chest. But deep down, I was already counting, already planning, already building the walls she'd never see until she crashed against them. The vineyard looked different after Dad died. Same rows of twisted vines, same red barn leaning slightly east, same mountains bruising purple at sunset. But emptier somehow, like someone had turned down the volume on the world and forgotten to turn it back up. The lawyer scheduled a meeting there for all the beneficiaries. Me, Verena, and the board of trustees who'd helped Dad manage the property for 30 years. Men and women with dirt under their fingernails and wine-stained smiles. People who actually understood what the land meant. Verena arrived in a BMW that looked like it cost more than most people's houses. She wore sunglasses indoors and checked her phone every 45 seconds like she had somewhere more important to be. The head trustee, a weathered man named Gerald with kind eyes, walked us through the financials. Revenue streams, operating costs, profit margins. The vineyard had been doing well, better than well, carrying Dad's legacy forward with every harvest. You'll both receive quarterly dividends, Gerald explained. But the property itself will remain under trust management unless you both agree to changes. That was your father's specific request. I want to make changes, Verena interrupted. I want us to sell off the smaller parcels. Develop them. There's a resort company willing to pay millions for the Western Ridge. Every trustee in the room went still. That land has the oldest vines, Gerald said carefully. Selling it would destroy half our production capacity. Then we'll make wine somewhere else. Verena shrugged. Progress requires sacrifice. I watched her talk, watched the trustees' faces close off one by one, and realized she'd already made up her mind. She saw dollar signs where Dad had seen legacy. She saw quick profit where he'd planted long-term growth. No, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. No sale. Not the Western Ridge. Not any of it. Verena's jaw tightened. You don't get to decide alone. Neither do you. That's the point of shared ownership. She stood up, chair scraping. You're going to block me at every turn, aren't you? Just like you blocked me from getting what I deserved in the first place. I didn't block anything, Verena. Dad made his choices. Dad made his choices, she mocked, voice dripping venom. You sound like a goddamn fortune cookie. You know what? Fine. Keep your precious vines. But I'm done pretending we're partners in this. She stormed out for the second time in a month. I was starting to notice a pattern. Gerald waited until her car disappeared down the gravel drive before speaking. Your sister doesn't understand what your father built here. No, I agreed. She doesn't. That night, Lennox made dinner while I sat at our kitchen table surrounded by file folders. Dad's records. Estate documents. Financial statements. Numbers that should have added up, but didn't quite. You okay? Lennox asked, setting a plate of pasta in front of me. There's money missing, I said, pointing to a line item that had been eating at me for hours. From Mom's old foundation account. The one Dad set up after she died to help the vineyard workers' families. He leaned over my shoulder, squinting at the spreadsheet. How much? 200,000 over 3 years. Small withdrawals. Easy to miss if you're not looking carefully. And you think Verena took it? I didn't want to think that. I wanted to believe my sister was just greedy, not criminal. But the numbers didn't lie, and the access codes for that account had only been shared with family. I don't know, I said. But I was lying to both of us. The next day, I called the foundation's bank. A cheerful representative pulled up the account history. Most recent withdrawal was 6 months ago, she said. 50,000 transferred to. She paused. An account under Verena Durnham's name. Is that a family member? My stomach dropped.
Yes.
Thank you. I hung up and sat very still, staring at my phone like it might offer explanations. Verena hadn't just taken from the estate. She'd stolen from the workers. From people who picked grapes in 100-degree heat and trusted our family to take care of them. People Mom had loved. Lennox's warning echoed in my head. Don't try to save someone who enjoys drowning. But this wasn't about saving Verena anymore. It was about protecting everyone else from her. I spent the next week buried in research. Late nights. Coffee-stained documents. Phone calls with financial advisors and lawyers who specialized in estate fraud. What I found made my blood run cold. Verena had been siphoning money from multiple accounts. Mom's foundation was just the beginning. She'd taken loans against the vineyard without telling the trustees. She'd sold equipment and pocketed the cash. She'd even mortgaged one of the rental properties under a shell company name. And she'd done it all while crying about fairness and equal shares. I confronted her at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. Public enough that she couldn't make a scene without witnesses. She arrived late, naturally, sliding into the booth across from me with that smile that used to charm everyone. This is unexpected. Are we bonding now? I slid a folder across the table. Explain these. She opened it, and I watched her face carefully. Looking for guilt.
For shame.
For anything human. Instead, I saw calculation. Her eyes flicked across the bank statements, the loan documents, the withdrawal slips, and then she closed the folder very calmly.
So you found out, she said.
Took you long enough. That money wasn't yours. Dad owed me more than he gave. She leaned back, arms crossed. I spent years playing second fiddle to you. The perfect daughter. The one who never asked for anything because she was too afraid of being called greedy. Well, I'm not afraid. I took what I deserved. You stole from vineyard workers. From families who trusted us. She laughed. Actually laughed. They're employees, Celeste. They get paychecks. That's enough. I'd never wanted to hit someone before.
Not really.
But in that moment, looking at my sister's cold indifference, my hands curled into fists under the table. I'm giving you one chance, I said quietly. Return the money. All of it. Quietly. And I won't report this. Or what? She leaned forward, eyes glittering. You'll tell on me? Run to the lawyers?
Please.
You don't have the spine for a real fight. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out without paying for her coffee. I sat there alone, watching steam rise from my untouched cup, and made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to fight her. I was going to let her destroy herself. The documents arrived 3 weeks later. Thick envelopes with law firm letterhead, legal papers that smelled like expensive printer ink, and consequences. I spread them across my dining room table and read every word twice. The trust Dad had hidden, buried so deep in estate paperwork that even the lawyers had almost missed it. An account in Mom's name, separate from the inheritance, designed specifically to support the vineyard workers. $300,000. Untouched by probate. Legally airtight. And Verena had no idea it existed. I called Gerald that evening. I want to activate Mom's trust. Set up a proper management company. Fair wages, education funds, housing support for the workers. Your father would have wanted that, Gerald said, his voice thick with emotion. He tried to do it himself before he got sick. Just ran out of time. Then let's finish what he started. It took 2 months to set everything up properly. LLC formation. Board appointments. Financial structures that kept the trust completely separate from the Durnham estate. I worked with advisors, tax attorneys, people who understood how to build something that would last beyond my lifetime. Lennox watched me work late into countless nights, papers scattered around me like fallen leaves. You're building a wall, he said one evening, setting a cup of tea beside my laptop. No, I corrected. I'm building a foundation. There's a difference. The company I created, Evelyn's Legacy, named after our mother, started operating in early spring. I negotiated with vineyard suppliers, established partnerships with local colleges for scholarship programs, renovated 3-worker housing units that had been falling apart for years. And I used the profits, the actual earned income from smart management and careful growth, to buy my house. Not inheritance money. Not estate funds. Money I'd earned through work that mattered. Verena showed up at the vineyard one afternoon while I was meeting with contractors about the housing renovations. She climbed out of her car like she owned the place, which technically she partially did, and marched straight toward me. "What's all this?" she demanded, gesturing at the construction crew. "Repairs. Long overdue." "Who authorized this?" "I did. Through the management company." Her eyes narrowed. "What management company?" "The one I established using Mom's trust. The one that's completely separate from our inheritance." I kept my voice pleasant, professional. "You remember. The trust you said wasn't our concern." I watched her brain work, trying to find the angle, the problem, the way this hurt her somehow. But there was nothing. I'd done everything legally, ethically, using money that had never been part of the estate division. "You think you're so clever," she said finally. "I think I'm finishing what Mom and Dad started. You're welcome to help if you want." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Help? You want me to play charity worker while you build your little empire? I don't think so." She left, but not before I saw something dangerous flash across her face.
Not anger this time.
Something colder. More calculating. 3 months later, I closed on my house. Small, yes, but mine. Every beam, every window, every polished floorboard paid for with work that actually meant something. Lennox and I spent weekends painting walls and planting flowers and building the kind of home that doesn't come from money, it comes from effort. We decided to celebrate with a housewarming party. Friends, family, good food, better wine. I even invited Verena, hoping maybe, stupidly, that she'd be happy for me. She RSVP'd yes, and I should have known better. The Vineyard Gala happened 2 weeks before my party. Annual event. Fancy dresses, expensive wine, donors and distributors, and people who kept the business running. I went because I had to. Verena went because she wanted to be seen. She found me near the dessert table, glass of champagne in hand, smile sharp as broken glass. "Nice dress," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Very practical." "Thanks. I wasn't going to take the bait. I heard about your little house. Very cute. Very modest." She took a long sip. "Enjoy it while it lasts." Something in her voice made my skin prickle. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just that things change. Property laws are complicated. Inheritances get messy." She leaned closer, champagne breath warm against my ear. "You'd be surprised what a good lawyer can find if they dig deep enough." She drifted away into the crowd, leaving me standing there with a suddenly sour taste in my mouth. Lennox found me 10 minutes later, saw my face, and asked what happened. "She threatened something," I said. "I don't know what exactly, but something." He took my hand. "Let her try. You've done everything right." But 2 days before my housewarming party, a certified letter arrived. Property claim, filed by Verena's attorney, alleging that my house had been purchased using estate funds and therefore fell under residual asset clauses that required family approval. It was completely false, completely fabricated, but it was also completely legal to file. I sat on my front steps reading the claim, feeling sunlight warm on my shoulders and ice cold in my chest. This wasn't about the house. It was about control. About Verena proving she could still take things from me even when I'd done everything to protect myself. Lennox read the letter over my shoulder and said nothing for a long minute. Then, "What are you going to do?" I folded the paper carefully.
"Throw the party anyway.
Let her make her scene." I looked up at him. "And then I'm going to let her hang herself with her own rope." "You have a plan?" The moment she filed that fraudulent claim, she triggered disclosure requirements in the company's operating agreement. Requirements that will expose every shady financial transaction she's made in the last 5 years. I smiled, and it felt cold even to me. "She doesn't know it yet." But she just walked into a trap of her own making. You set this up, Lennox said slowly. You knew she'd try something. I hoped she wouldn't, but I prepared in case she did. I stood up, brushing dust from my jeans. Dad taught me to build things that last. That means building in protections against people who want to tear them down. The party was in 2 days. 2 days for Verena to feel triumphant. 2 days for her to believe she'd won. And then I'd show her what real power looked like. The house smelled like rosemary and roasted garlic when guests started arriving. Lennox had spent all afternoon cooking while I set tables and arranged flowers and tried not to think about what was coming. Tried not to imagine Verena walking through my door with her poisonous smile and legal documents. But she came anyway. Of course she did. She arrived fashionably late, wearing designer heels that clicked against my hardwood floors like a countdown timer. She brought expensive wine that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage and kissed my cheek like we were sisters who actually loved each other. Beautiful place, she said, her eyes scanning every corner like she was already measuring for new curtains. You must be so proud. I am, I said simply. Amira appeared at my elbow, wine glass in hand, eyes sharp. She'd known Verena since high school. She knew what my sister was capable of. Verena, Amira said coolly. Surprised to see you here? Wouldn't miss it, Verena replied, all sugar and venom. It's not every day my little sister buys a house, even if it's temporary. The word hung in the air like smoke. Amira's grip tightened on her glass. I touched her arm gently. Not yet. Not here. Dinner started beautifully. Conversations flowed. Wine poured. Laughter echoed off walls that still smelled like fresh paint. For an hour, I let myself believe maybe Verena would just eat and leave. Maybe she makes snide comments, but nothing more. Then she tapped her glass with a spoon. The room went quiet like someone had pressed mute on the universe. Verena stood, shoulders back, chin high, looking every bit the golden child who'd learned to command attention before she could walk. Everyone, she said, voice carrying easily across my small dining room. I have an announcement. My hands were under the table, hidden.
Counting.
Preparing. 3, 2, 1. She pulled the folder from her bag. The same folder I'd seen in the certified letter. The same fraudulent claim that was about to cost her everything. I've spoken to my lawyer, she continued, playing to the crowd like she was on stage. And as of this morning, I am the legal owner of this house.
Gasps.
Murmurs. Someone dropped their fork. Lennox took a slow sip of wine, eyes never leaving my face. Verena spread the documents across my table, across plates still warm with food, across the dinner party I'd worked so hard to create. According to our father's estate, any property purchased with family funds requires family approval, which Celeste never got. She looked directly at me, triumph blazing in her eyes. So this house? It's mine now. All of it. She turned back to the guests, arms wide like she was accepting applause. I think everyone should know who really owns what in this family. No more secrets. No more favorites. The room sat frozen. My neighbor looked ready to cry. The couple from Lennox's office seemed desperate to leave, but too shocked to move. Amira's hand found mine under the table, squeezing so hard I felt my bones shift. But I didn't squeeze back. I just sat there, calm as morning fog, counting down in my head while my sister performed her victory dance on top of everything I'd built. When she finished, when the last word of her theatrical announcement faded into horrified silence, I looked up at her and smiled. Verena, I said softly, you might want to check your email. Her face flickered. Just for a second. Confusion bleeding through the cracks of her confidence. What? Your phone. Check it. She fumbled with her bag, movements suddenly clumsy. The screen lit up her face in cold blue light, and I watched carefully as the color drained from her skin like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened.
Closed.
Opened again. What did you do? She whispered. I took a slow sip of wine, feeling every eye in the room on us. I didn't do anything, Verena. You did. She stared at her phone, scrolling, reading, scrolling again. I knew what she was seeing. Account freeze notifications. Legal summons. Board of Trustees emergency meeting alerts. Every financial secret she'd buried for years suddenly dragged into fluorescent light. "This isn't possible," she breathed. "You filed a fraudulent property claim," I explained calmly, voice steady even though my heart was racing. "That triggered mandatory financial disclosure requirements. Requirements built into the company's operating agreement when I established Evelyn's legacy." I paused. "You remember, the management company you said wasn't our concern." Her phone kept buzzing. More notifications. More consequences. I watched her face cycle through emotions: denial, rage, fear, panic, landing finally on something like desperation. "You planned this," she accused. "You set me up." "No," I said gently. "I built something real. Something legal. Something that protects good people from bad decisions." I set my wine glass down carefully. "You walked into this trap all by yourself." Around the table, guests were starting to understand. Understanding was spreading like sunrise, slow but inevitable. Verena, the golden child, the charming sister, had just destroyed herself in front of witnesses. She grabbed her phone, her purse, her coat. Hands shaking. Eyes wild. "This isn't over." "Actually," I said, "it is." She ran. Literally ran out of my house, heels clicking frantically, door slamming so hard the windows rattled. Her car engine roared to life and squealed away into the night. The silence she left behind felt thick enough to swim through. Then Amira started laughing. Soft at first, then louder. "Did that really just happen?" Lennox reached for my hand above the table this time. "You okay?" I nodded slowly.
Yeah.
"I think I am." The guests stayed another hour, conversations resuming quietly, carefully, everyone processing what they'd witnessed. By midnight, they'd all left, offering hugs and support and promises to call tomorrow. Amira lingered at the door. "You knew she'd do this." "I hoped she wouldn't," I admitted. "But I prepared in case she did." "That's the difference between you two.
She takes.
You build." Amira hugged me tight. "Call me if you need anything." After she left, Lennox and I cleaned up in comfortable silence. Dishes, glasses, napkins stained with wine and secrets. When everything was put away, we stood in our kitchen, our house, our home that no one could take from us. "What happens now?" he asked. I thought about Verena's frozen accounts. The investigation that would follow. The reputation crumbling like old brick. The life she'd built on lies finally catching fire. "Now," I said quietly, "she learns that actions have consequences." My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number. Just 3 words. "You destroyed me." I typed back slowly, carefully. "No, Verena. You destroyed yourself." Then I turned off my phone and went to bed, exhausted but lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying weight I didn't know existed and someone had finally lifted it from my shoulders. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, my house stood solid and real. Built on truth instead of theft. Paid for with effort instead of entitlement. And tomorrow I knew the real reckoning would begin. The news spread faster than wildfire in drought season. By morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Friends checking in. Distant relatives suddenly concerned. Even people I hadn't spoken to in years asking if the rumors were true. Had Verena really tried to steal my house? Had she really been caught committing fraud? Yes and yes. The Vineyard Board held an emergency meeting at 7 a.m. I wasn't required to attend, but Gerald called anyway. "Thought you'd want to know what's happening." I put him on speaker so Lennox could hear. We sat at the kitchen table, coffee steaming between us, listening to Gerald's weathered voice explain how everything was unraveling. "The forensic accountants found everything," he said. "The loans she took against Vineyard equipment. The shell companies. The money she siphoned from your mother's foundation."
He paused.
"It's bad, Celeste. Really bad." "How bad?" "Federal investigation bad. The board voted unanimously to remove her as a beneficiary pending the outcome. Her accounts are frozen. Her lawyer dropped her case this morning before it even reached preliminary hearings. I should have felt triumphant, victorious, something warm and satisfying. Instead, I just felt tired. What about the workers? I asked. The money she stole from them? Evelyn's legacy is covering it. Full restitution plus interest. Nobody loses except Verena. Gerald's voice softened. Your father would be proud of what you built. After we hung up, Lennox refilled my coffee without asking. You okay? She's my sister, I said quietly. I didn't want this. You didn't do this. She did. I knew he was right. Logically, rationally, I understood that Verena had made every choice that led here. But logic doesn't stop the ache that comes from watching family destroy themselves. The morning paper arrived an hour later. Front page of the business section. Local heiress under investigation for estate fraud. They'd used her favorite photo, the one from the charity gala where she looked elegant and untouchable. Now, everyone would know the truth. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Another text. Everyone's staring. They all know. You did this to me. I stared at the words for a long time before responding. I gave you a chance to make it right. You chose not to take it. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then nothing. Over the next 48 hours, Verena's entire world collapsed like a building with rotten foundations. Social invitations vanished. Business partners distanced themselves. The country club where she'd been a member since college quietly asked her to surrender her membership. Even worse, the newspapers kept digging. Every day brought new headlines. New revelations. Money she'd borrowed and never repaid. Partnerships she'd sabotaged. People she'd stepped on while climbing toward success that was never really hers. Amira came over on the 3rd day, bringing wine and solidarity. We sat on my back porch watching sunset paint the sky orange and purple, not talking much, just being present. You know what's wild? She said finally. You won without fighting. I didn't win. Nobody wins when family falls apart. No, listen. She turned to face me. Verena spent her whole life fighting.
Clawing. Taking.
And in the end, all that aggression destroyed her.
But you?
You just built something real and let her crash against it. She raised her glass. That's not winning. That's evolution. I clinked my glass against hers, but the wine tasted bitter going down. That night, another text arrived. This time from Verena's actual number. Just 3 words. I hate you. I didn't respond. What could I say? That I was sorry? That I wish things were different? That somewhere under all the greed and jealousy, I still remembered the sister who used to braid my hair and share secrets after bedtime? Words couldn't fix what was broken. Maybe nothing could. A week later, the formal charges came through. Wire fraud. Embezzlement. Falsifying legal documents. Each charge carried years of potential prison time. Verena's high-powered lawyer was replaced by a public defender. Her penthouse apartment went up for sale to cover legal fees. Everything she'd built on lies was crumbling into dust. I tried not to follow the news, but it was everywhere. Local scandal. The golden daughter who'd fallen from grace. People loved the drama, the schadenfreude, the proof that pretty faces and charm couldn't buy immunity from consequences. Gerald called with updates I didn't ask for. The vineyard was thriving under proper management. The workers were receiving back pay with interest. Evelyn's legacy was expanding, adding medical benefits and retirement planning. Good things were growing from Verena's ashes. But I couldn't celebrate them. Not yet. 2 weeks after the dinner party, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a single page of notebook paper covered in Verena's handwriting. Messy. Desperate. Nothing like her usual perfect script. You won. I don't know how you did it, but you did. I just wanted what was mine. I wanted to matter. To be seen. To have something nobody could take away. But you took it all. You took everything. I hope you're happy. I read it 3 times, looking for an apology that wasn't there. Looking for understanding that she couldn't give. All I found was blame and bitterness and the same refusal to accept responsibility that had destroyed her in the first place. Lennox found me on the couch, letter in hand, tears on my cheeks. What did she say? She still doesn't get it. She thinks I did this to her. He sat beside me, pulling me close. Some people never learn. They just keep falling until they hit bottom. What if there is no bottom? What if she just keeps falling forever? Then that's her choice. Not your responsibility. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel clean and justified and right. But all I felt was sad. Sad for the sister I'd lost somewhere between childhood and greed. Sad for the family that should have been but never was. That night, I did something I hadn't done since Dad died. I went to the vineyard alone, walked through rows of grapevines under moonlight, and talked to ghosts. I tried, Dad. I whispered to the darkness. I tried to protect what you built, but it cost me my sister. The wind moved through the leaves like breathing. Somewhere distant, an owl called, and for just a moment, I felt peace settle over me like a blanket. Not happiness, not victory, just peace. The next morning, I made a decision. I transferred money, not to Verena, but to the Workers' Education Fund. A substantial amount. Enough to send 12 kids to college. Enough to change lives that mattered. I did it in Mom's name, in Dad's memory, in honor of what family should mean when it's built on love instead of competition. And I did it knowing Verena would probably never understand why. The court date was set for September. I wasn't required to testify, but the prosecution wanted me available as a witness. They had everything they needed without my testimony. Paper trails and bank records don't lie, but they wanted the option. Just in case. I told them I'd come if necessary. Then I tried very hard not to think about it. Life moved forward the way it does when you let it. Lennox got a promotion at work. Amira started dating someone who made her laugh. The vineyard produced its best harvest in a decade. Everything around me bloomed while my sister withered in the background of my thoughts. I didn't hear from Verena directly, but I heard about her. Through Gerald. Through mutual acquaintances who didn't know when to stop talking. She'd moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. She was working, actual work, at a real estate office answering phones. Her car had been repossessed. Her designer clothes sold on consignment websites. She'd become ordinary. And for someone who'd spent her whole life demanding to be extraordinary, ordinary was probably worse than prison. Part of me, a small, quiet part one didn't like to acknowledge, felt satisfied. Not happy exactly, but vindicated. She'd spent years making me feel small, and now she understood what small actually felt like. But mostly I just felt empty. 3 months after the dinner party, I was working in my home office when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Lennox was at work. Amira had yoga. I opened the door, and there she stood. Verena looked different. Thinner, yes, but also smaller somehow. Like she'd been folded in on herself. No designer clothes. No perfect makeup. Just jeans and a plain sweater, and eyes that couldn't quite meet mine. "Hi," she said quietly. We stood there for a long moment, me in the doorway, her on the porch we used to play on as kids back at our parents' house. Different porch, same dynamic. Always separated by some invisible line. "Can I come in?" she asked. Every instinct screamed no. Self-preservation. Boundaries. Protection against people who'd hurt you before and would probably hurt you again. But I stepped aside anyway. She walked through my house like she was visiting a museum. Careful. Respectful. Taking in details she'd been too angry to notice before. The photos on the walls. The books on the shelves. The life I'd built without her. "Coffee," I offered, because I didn't know what else to say. "Please." We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where she'd announced her fraudulent claim months ago. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "I'm not here to apologize," she said finally. "I mean, I should apologize. I know I should, but I don't think you want to hear it." "No," I agreed. "I don't." She nodded, fingers wrapped around the coffee mug like it was the only solid thing in her world. "The trial's in 2 weeks. My lawyer says I'll probably get 18 months, maybe less with good behavior." I heard. Everyone's heard. She laughed, but it sounded broken. Funny how fast people forget you exist when you're not useful anymore. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound cruel or false. I destroyed everything, she continued, talking to her coffee more than to me. The vineyard shares, the inheritance, my reputation, my life. She looked up finally. And you know the worst part? I still don't fully understand how you did it. I didn't do anything. Bullshit. Her voice sharpened for just a second before softening again. You planned it. The company structure. The disclosure clauses. The trap I walked right into. You knew I'd try something, and you built a cage around yourself that would catch me if I did. I built protections, I corrected. Against fraud. Against theft. They would have caught anyone who tried what you tried. It just happened to be you. She stared at me for a long time. You're telling me this wasn't personal? It was business. Family business. The kind Dad taught me to handle properly. Something in her face crumbled. He taught you everything. He taught me nothing. He tried. You didn't want to learn. I wanted to be loved, she said, voice breaking. I wanted to matter without having to work for it. I wanted what you had without understanding how you got it. She set down her mug with shaking hands. And now I have nothing. Less than nothing. Silence filled the kitchen like water rising. I should have felt vindicated. Victorious. This was the moment where the villain breaks down and the hero gets validation. But I just felt tired. Why are you here, Verena? She took a shaky breath. Because in 2 weeks, I'm going to prison. And when I get out, if I get out, everything I knew will be gone. Everyone will have moved on. She looked at me with eyes that finally showed something real. And I wanted you to know that you were right. About all of it. I was greedy. Jealous. Cruel. I took things that weren't mine and hurt people who didn't deserve it. Is this an apology? No. She stood up slowly. It's a confession. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I just needed you to know that I finally understand the difference between taking and earning. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. You could have destroyed me completely, she said without turning around. The lawyers told me. You had enough evidence to press charges yourself. Civil suits. Financial ruin beyond what's already happening. But you didn't. She looked back over her shoulder. Why? I thought about all the reasons. Strategy. Mercy. Exhaustion. The fact that watching her destroy herself was worse than any punishment I could inflict. But what I said was simpler. Because I'm not you. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. Then she left, closing the door softly behind her, and I was alone in my kitchen with 2 coffee mugs and the ghost of a sister I'd never really known. That night, Lennox came home to find me sitting in the dark. He didn't ask questions, just sat beside me and held my hand until the weight in my chest felt light enough to carry. She came by. I said finally, I know. I saw her car leaving. She's going to prison. I know that too. I don't feel good about it. He squeezed my hand. You're not supposed to. That's what makes you different from her. I leaned against him, exhausted from emotions I didn't know how to name. What now? Now you keep building. Keep creating. Keep being the person your parents raised you to be. He kissed my forehead. And you let Verena figure out who she wants to become. 2 weeks later, the verdict came through. 18 months in minimum security. Restitution payments. Probation afterward. The judge called it a cautionary tale about privilege and accountability. The newspapers ran the story for 3 days before moving on to newer scandals. And I really tried, to move forward too. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Plain envelope. Prison return address. Verena's name in the corner, followed by a number that reduced her to digits instead of a person. I almost threw it away without opening it. Almost. But something stopped me. Curiosity maybe. Or the last threads of sisterhood that hadn't quite snapped. Inside was a single page. Her handwriting neater now, like she'd taken time to write it carefully. Celeste, you don't have to read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what you built. Not just the company or the house. The life. The one based on actual work instead of shortcuts. It took losing everything to see what you had all along. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I finally get it. Verena. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer next to Dad's final letter. Bookends of a story that was finally ending. Lennox found me there an hour later, staring at nothing. You okay? She wrote to me from prison. And I don't know what to feel about it. I turned to face him. Is it wrong that I still care? Even after everything? No, he said gently. It would be wrong if you didn't. Caring about people who hurt you doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Over the next few months, more letters came. Not many. Maybe one every 3 weeks. Verena didn't beg or plead or ask for help. She just wrote about what she was learning. Programs she was taking. Books she was reading. Small revelations about who she'd been and who she wanted to become. I didn't respond to most of them, but I read every single one. Life continued its steady rhythm. The vineyard expanded operations. Evelyn's legacy funded scholarships for 8 kids. Amira got engaged. Lennox and I talked about maybe starting a family someday. Good things grew in the space where chaos used to live. Then one Saturday afternoon, 6 months after Verena went to prison, I did something I hadn't planned to do. I transferred money. Not much. Just enough to cover basic needs. Into an account I'd set up in her name, accessible when she got out. Not for her. For me. Because holding on to anger was exhausting, and I was tired of carrying weight that wasn't mine. Lennox saw the transaction on our joint account and just smiled. Told you that you weren't like her. I'm still not forgiving her. No, he agreed. But you're not destroying her either. There's a difference. I thought about that difference a lot. About how revenge is easy and mercy is hard. About how the real measure of strength isn't in how much damage you can do, but in how much you choose not to. A week later, a letter arrived that was different from the others. Shorter. Shakier writing. I saw what you did. The account. The money. I don't deserve it, and we both know it. But thank you. Not just for the money. For showing me that people can change even when they don't deserve second chances. I'm trying to be better. Not for you. For me. Because I'm tired of being the person I was. Your sister, Verena. I put that letter in the drawer too. Then I closed it and walked away, feeling lighter than I had in months. Amira's wedding happened in spring. Beautiful ceremony. Lots of flowers and laughter and promises about forever. I was the maid of honor. Lennox cried during the vows, which he denied immediately afterward. At the reception, during a quiet moment between toasts, Amira pulled me aside. You know what I love about you? You won without becoming a monster. That's rare. I didn't win anything, I said. I just survived. Same thing sometimes, she replied, squeezing my hand. Same thing. That night, dancing with Lennox under string lights and stars, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in over a year.
Peace.
Real peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of contentment. Verena was still in prison. The vineyard was still thriving. Life was still complicated. But I'd built something real, something good, something that couldn't be stolen or destroyed or taken away. And that, I realized, was the actual victory. 3 months before Verena's release date, I received a phone call from her prison counselor. Your sister's been participating in our community outreach program, teaching financial literacy to other inmates. She asked me to call and let you know. The counselor paused. She's different now. Really different. I thought you'd want to hear that from someone objective. I thanked her and hung up, staring at my phone like it might offer explanations.
Different.
The word echoed.
People could change.
Not always. Not easily. But sometimes. Maybe this was one of those times. Lennox asked what I was thinking about, and I answered honestly. Whether second chances are earned or given.
Both, he said.
Always both. That night, I wrote Verena a letter. The first one I'd sent since she went to prison. It was short, simple, just 3 sentences. When you get out, if you want to talk, I'll listen. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just conversation. Celeste. I mailed it the next morning before I could change my mind. And then I waited. The day Verena got out, I wasn't there. She didn't ask me to be, and I didn't offer. Some transitions need to happen alone. But 3 weeks later, she called. "Hi," she said, voice uncertain. "It's me." "I know." Silence stretched between us like rope bridge over a canyon. One wrong word, and everything could collapse. "I got your letter," she said finally. "The one about talking." "Okay. Could we? Talk, I mean, if you still want to." I looked around my home office. At the photos on the walls. The life I'd built. The safety I'd created. And I thought about bridges, how they only work if both sides are willing to meet in the middle.
Coffee, I said. Saturday.
The place on 4th Street. I'll be there. Saturday came wrapped in autumn sunshine. I arrived early, ordered coffee, sat by the window watching leaves fall like slow-motion surrender. When Verena walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She wore jeans and a sweater. No designer labels. No perfect makeup. Her hair was longer, simpler. She looked like someone who'd learned to stop performing and started just being. She sat down across from me carefully. "Thanks for coming." "Thanks for calling." We sipped coffee in awkward silence, two women who used to share a childhood but had become strangers somewhere along the way. "I've been working," she said eventually. "Real estate office. Just administrative stuff. But it's honest work. Pays enough to cover rent and food." She smiled faintly. "Turns out I don't need much." "That's good." "The Vineyard Board offered me a position," she continued. "Community outreach. Teaching financial literacy to the workers' kids. Same thing I did in prison." She looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. "Gerald said you approved it. The board makes its own decisions. But you're on the board now. You could have blocked it." "I could have. Probably should have. But blocking her would have been about punishment, and I was tired of punishing people." "You earn the opportunity," I said. "What you do with it is up to you." She nodded slowly, like she was accepting responsibility for the first time in her life. "I'm not asking to be sisters again. I don't think we can go back to that. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. Really trying." "I can see that." We talked for an hour. Not about the past, not about the trial, or the fraud, or the hurt. We talked about small things. The weather. Books she'd read. Plans she was making. It felt strange and uncomfortable and oddly healing, like cleaning out a wound that had festered too long. When we stood to leave, she paused. "I know I destroyed any chance of having a relationship with you. I know that. But maybe, someday, we could be acquaintances who don't hate each other." I thought about it. About forgiveness and consequences, and whether people could really change. About the difference between accepting someone's growth and forgetting what they'd done. "Maybe," I said. "We'll see." She smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked genuine. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." She left first. I watched her walk away through the coffee shop window, noticing how she held herself differently now. Humbler.
Smaller.
More real. Over the following months, I'd see her occasionally. At Vineyard events, where she'd be teaching kids about budgeting. At the grocery store, where we'd exchange polite nods. At community meetings, where she'd volunteer for unglamorous tasks nobody else wanted. She never asked for more than I was willing to give. Never pushed for reconciliation or forgiveness or the relationship we'd lost. She just existed quietly in the background of my life, working hard, staying humble, proving through actions instead of words that people could change. One afternoon, almost a year after her release, I was working in my backyard garden when a car pulled up. Verena stepped out, carrying a small plant in a clay pot.
"Hi," she said.
"I was at the nursery and thought of you. I know you like gardening now." She handed me the pot. Inside was a small vine plant, leaves deep green and healthy. "For your garden," she explained. "It's from the same stock as the vineyard vines. Same roots as what Mom and Dad planted 40 years ago." I took the plant, feeling the weight of it. The history. The connection to something bigger than our petty battles and broken trust.
Thank you, I said.
She didn't stay long. Just long enough to show me how to plant it, where it would get the best sun, how often to water it. Then she left, and I stood alone in my garden holding a piece of our shared history. That evening, I planted it near the back fence. Lennox watched from the porch. "She's really trying, isn't she?" he said. "Yeah," I agreed. "She really is." "Does that change anything?" I thought about it while pressing dirt around the small plant's roots. "It doesn't erase what happened, but maybe it writes a different ending." Months passed. The vine grew, slowly at first, then stronger. By spring, it was climbing the fence, reaching for sunlight, proving that even things that seem dead can sometimes come back to life. Verena and I weren't close. We probably never would be. But we'd found something else. Not sisterhood exactly. Not friendship. But maybe understanding. Mutual respect. The acknowledgement that we'd both been shaped by the same forces and had chosen different paths forward. And sometimes I realized that was enough. One Sunday morning, a year and a half after her release, I woke to find an envelope under my door. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Inside was a single card with Verena's handwriting. "Thank you for teaching me the difference between taking and earning. For showing me that real power isn't in ownership, but in creation. I finally understand what you built. Not just the house or the company. The life. The one that matters. Your sister, Verena." I read it over breakfast while watching the vine plant, now strong and green, climbing toward the sky. And I felt something I hadn't felt since before Dad died.
Hope.
Not for what was,
but for what could be.
2 years after the dinner party that changed everything, the vineyard held its annual harvest festival. The event had grown bigger over time. More vendors. More visitors. Families spreading blankets on the grass, while children ran between grapevines and laughter echoed off the hills. Evelyn's legacy had sponsored the whole thing, turning it into a community celebration instead of just a business function. I walked through the crowds with Lennox, our daughter, Emma, 6 months old and sleeping in a carrier against my chest. Life had continued growing in ways I couldn't have imagined back when everything felt like it was falling apart. Near the main pavilion, I spotted Verena teaching a group of teenagers about viticulture. She'd been working with the Vineyard's education program for over a year now, and the transformation was complete. No more designer clothes or perfect makeup. Just work boots and genuine smiles, and the kind of satisfaction that comes from building instead of taking.
She saw me and waved.
I waved back. We met later by the dessert table, both holding plates of strawberry shortcake, both pretending we hadn't eaten 3 pieces already. "She's beautiful," Verena said softly, looking at Emma. "She has your eyes." "Thanks. Can I?" She gestured toward the baby. I hesitated. Old wounds don't heal overnight. Trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. But I saw the hope in her face, the vulnerability, the woman she'd worked so hard to become. Just for a minute, she held Emma carefully, like she was made of glass. The baby stirred but didn't wake. Verena's expression softened into something I hadn't seen since we were kids ourselves. "I never thought I'd get to do this," she said quietly. "Be part of your life again, even just at the edges." "You earned it," I said. "The hard way." She handed Emma back and wiped her eyes quickly. "I know I can never undo what I did. The fraud.
The theft.
The way I tried to destroy you." "No," I agreed. "You can't. But maybe I can build something different going forward. Something that makes up for it. Even just a little." I looked around at the festival. At families enjoying themselves. At workers whose kids were going to college because of programs Verena now helped run. At the vineyard thriving because we'd protected it instead of exploiting it. "You already are," I said. Later that evening, as the sun set and lanterns lit up across the festival grounds, I stood with Lennox watching everything we'd built together. The business, the family, the community. All of it growing from seeds planted in darkness and watered with patience instead of revenge. "What are you thinking about?" Lennox asked. "About how the house was never the point," I said. "When Verena tried to take it, She thought she was taking my victory. But the victory was never in owning property. It was in building a life that meant something. He kissed my temple. Your dad knew what he was doing when he left you that letter. I thought about Dad's final words. Protect what matters. The people, not the property. He'd understood something Verena was only now learning. That real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or property deeds. It's measured in lives changed and communities built and legacy that outlasts your name. Across the field, Verena was helping pack up teaching materials, laughing with one of the other volunteers. She looked happy. Not the fake happiness she'd worn like expensive jewelry. Real happiness that came from work that mattered. Think you'll ever fully forgive her? Lennox asked. I don't know, I admitted. But I'm not carrying the anger anymore. That's close enough. Emma woke up and started fussing. I bounced her gently, whispering nonsense words until she settled. This little human who'd never know the battle that came before her. Who'd grow up in a family that learned, however painfully, that love is complicated and forgiveness is work, and sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose peace over punishment. As we walked to the car, Verena caught up with us. Hey, I know you're heading out, but I wanted to say thank you for letting me be part of this. The festival, the program, everything. You're part of it because you put in the work, I said. Keep doing that and there's no limit to what you can build. She nodded, and I saw tears in her eyes. I know I say this too much, but I really am sorry. For all of it. I know. She hugged me quickly, carefully, like she was afraid I'd disappear. Then she walked back toward the pavilion, and I watched her go, feeling something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. But maybe the beginning of it. In the car, Lennox asked, You okay? Yeah, I said, surprised to find it was true. I really am. We drove home through darkening streets, Emma asleep in the back seat, the vineyard disappearing in the rear-view mirror. My house waited, warm and real, and mine not because I owned it, but because I'd built it with intention and protected it with boundaries and filled it with love that mattered. That night, after Emma was asleep and Lennox was reading in bed, I stood in my backyard looking at the vine Verena had given me. It had grown tall and strong, climbing the fence like it was trying to reach something bigger than itself. I thought about the moral of this whole messy story, about quiet justice and the difference between destruction and accountability, about how sometimes the loudest victories are the ones whispered in the dark. Verena had shouted that she owned my house. I'd simply let the truth speak for itself. And in the end, the truth was enough. Not because I was better than her, but because I'd learned something she hadn't. That real power isn't in taking. It's in building. It's in creating systems that protect good people and expose bad behavior. It's in choosing mercy without sacrificing justice. Family may betray you. Blood may turn venomous. But integrity, once earned, cannot be stolen. I smiled at the vine, at the stars, at the quiet house behind me, and felt grateful. Not for the battle, but for surviving it with my humanity intact. Then I went inside, locked the door, and went to bed in the home nobody could ever take from me. Because it was never about ownership. It was always about building something worth keeping. And that, finally, was enough. Thank you for watching this story about family, betrayal, and the quiet power of building instead of destroying. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. We have more incredible tales of resilience, justice, and human transformation coming soon. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? How did you handle betrayal while keeping your integrity intact? Your stories inspire others facing similar situations. Hit that subscribe button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and remember that sometimes the strongest response to aggression is simply building something they can't tear down. See you in the next story.